High Level is a full CRM and marketing platform, and I've used some of the best in the SaaS industry. And we are live from LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. It's Reveting's Wednesday. Welcome to Wednesday, Revenue Party people. We've got our hot topics and our hot guests on this hot Wednesday evening. Actually, it's kind of cool here in Ohio, but let's get into it. But before we do, of course, I have to remind you about Cherry Assistant. And luckily, I'm so excited. We just hired a new executive assistant today. So we're growing a little team of VAs here at Reveting, thanks to Cherry Assistant. So if you're watching on video, scan the QR code, or if you're listening on podcast, just go to cherryassistant.com and fill out their form to be placed with a virtual assistant who has the skills that you're seeking. So I've had a really great experience working with Cherry Assistant, so much so that, I love promoting them on my show even. Because I don't promote brands that I don't work with or that I don't support. But DJ Kim has just proven himself over and over again with this company. And Natasha started today, so I'm super excited to have her. Of course, we've got Layla in the background producing, but you may not need an EA. You may not need a producer for a live stream. You might need a bookkeeper or something else. So just go to Cherry Assistant, talk to them, and let them know what your need is. And if you let them know that you heard about them through WinsDay, you'll get $250 off your first month. So start delegating, because that's really how you're actually going to grow. And then I also want to remind you about High Level. So if you go to reveting.com/high level, that's my affiliate link where you can get a 30-day free trial of High Level. So back when I was a CMO at a tech company, I was spoiled with all the really great expensive tools. I mean, we were paying like 5 figures for CRMs and marketing automation tools. But then when I started my own business, it was I don't know, $300 a month or something just for a dedicated IP so I could properly send emails. That would have broke me in the early days of business. So I ended up finding High Level. It was only $97 a month. And for that $97 a month, not only did I get a CRM and marketing automation platform, but so did 2 of my clients, meaning I could literally build for them. So I'm a big proponent of High Level, not just because it's budget friendly, but because it has all the tools and the robust features that those expensive tools have, but without the price. It's newer, it's nimble, it's been built around AI. It's not a giant ecosystem like some of those CRMs. You got to hire just a specific jockey just to go deal with the apex to make an automation work. It's not like that. So scan the QR code if you're shopping around. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. It is an agency platform. So now we've white labeled it, and it's app.reveting.com. And all of our clients get their own CRM when they sign up with us, meaning we can literally show them the leads we're giving them. So when we help businesses go live on LinkedIn, we gate those live streams. So not only are we bringing guests onto their show and getting them leads that way that are coming through their high level calendar, but then all the attendees, which if you registered for this show, sorry, we got your email too, but we'll download those and put them in the CRM as well. And that's how we're getting 100 plus leads a week for our clients. And having a CRM for us helps us prove that. So it is an agency tool, but you can also use it as an individual business. So if you're looking for something that works well, is budget friendly, check out High Level. I'd love to talk to you about it. But thank you everyone who's here, who's joining from the comments. Let us know, where are you tuning in from? I see there's one person on YouTube, but on LinkedIn, let's see, what are you all doing? Where is everyone? Let us know not only where are you tuning in from, but what is it that you do so we can make this conversation relevant for you. Share your comments, questions. We'll put them up on the screen during the chat. But let's get right into it. So we've got two great guests I'd love to welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. We've got Ricky Ho and Jesse Wroblewski, which I just tried to say it the Polish way, which would be like Wroblewski, which I probably butchered. But how do you really pronounce it?
I tell people 3 words: Wroblewski.
Wroblewski. I like that. Perfect. Well, thank you for being here. And in good old-fashioned Wednesday style, could you both tell us your full life story from birth to what brought you to now in 2 minutes? We'll put the clock up. Jesse, could you kick us off?
Sure. So I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist until I got a job in a hospital, literally walking people in circles in slow motion for 8 hours a day. And the worst part of all of it was making small talk. It was the same conversation every hour, switching patients, walking in slow motion, coming up with the same small talk. It drove me insane. So I did a complete 360. I went to a tech school for web design and marketing, ate everything they could give me. And then I started my own agency, and that was about 26 years ago. So 26 years in the agency marketing business is enough to drive anyone crazy. And I started trying to stack the deck in my favor. So clients would come to me and they wouldn't be differentiated at all. And I knew they would, in 6 months, even though they self-diagnosed themselves, 6 months, not be happy with the prescription that they gave themselves and part ways on a bad note. So I was always trying to help them differentiate. That way I could be more successful. So a client would come to me and say, hey, we sell business phone systems. We're ready to do social media. We think that's the answer to our business growth. And I would say, it's probably not going to happen for you on social media. And they would just write the check. And if I didn't take their business, they'd find someone else who would take the check. So I started going deeper and deeper. And when the pandemic hit, I just kind of did that soul search that everybody seemed to do. And I decided the biggest impact I've ever had with any of my clients is when I truly helped usually a boring or commoditized business really inject personality into their business, their product, or their service, and stand out. And instead of racing to the bottom, help them charge a premium for their services. So I'm a comic book nerd. I learned that there are a lot of parallels in marketing with the way supervillains think. So I wrote my first book, Marketing for Supervillains, and I'll be happy to dive a little deeper into what all that means later.
I love that. Oops, I'm not supposed to click. Sorry, Layla. I always produced the show myself for a long time, and now that I have someone else do it, I'm really bad about clicking on top, which is why the intro video messed up. That was my fault. I apologize. But Jesse, thank you for sharing that. And I guess just looking at your wall and kind of seeing your background, I kind of put it all together. I see the comic book piece. I feel it in your energy with all the colors in the background. And I always appreciate people who come from or think they're going to start in one area, like physical therapy, and then you're in something completely different. Because I was the same. I started my career in politics. And yeah, thank goodness I got out of that. But Ricky, I'm so excited to hear about you. Can you tell us your full life story from birth to what brought you to now?
Yeah, of course. So I have a little less conventional kind of background. So I actually was born in Hong Kong. I lived in both Asia and the US. So for the first kind of childhood, I actually lived in Hong Kong and Shanghai. My family were immigrants to the US. But before, we were basically in the manufacturing industry. So we made clothes for like a lot of the top brands like Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger. So growing up, I always like went to the factories just to see like how things are made. And that's kind of what got me into, got my interest in supply chain. I ended up studying at Cal Berkeley in industrial engineering, but I actually dropped out my second year to start my first business. And partially it was because, during my summer, my second year, I traveled back to Asia, and I was, visiting all these factories, and I just realized like how not digitized their processes were. Everything was like run on Excel. So I started my first business called Tree Lab, and we were basically a supply chain management system to help retailers and manufacturers better collaborate and digitize their supply chain. I did that for 5 years. We raised over $20 million from like Sequoia, GGV, Tencent. And then we ended up selling the company last year. And then, I was going to take a break for a while, but I had a really good idea for what I'm building now, because I just had so many, of our past customers and even people around me ask for like recommendations to suppliers. So everyone's like, hey, do you know any factories in like Vietnam that can make this? And I was like, why don't you just like find it yourself? And then they're like, it's very hard to find like the really good factories online. So yeah, we created SourceReady. So our company is a year old, and we're basically trying to help, brands and entrepreneurs find the best supplier globally with AI. And yeah, like personally, I love running. I love hiking. I live in the Bay Area in San Francisco, so sometimes I play golf as well. So yeah, those are some of my hobbies. And thank you for inviting me to the show.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for being here. College dropout. Just, it sounds so like Silicon Valley cliche, like Cal Berkeley, 2 years and then done. So, how long ago was that? And do you think you'll ever go back?
I dropped out 8 years ago now. Actually,
Wow.
well, yeah, 8 years. Yeah. And probably not. But actually, funny enough, during my freshman year, one of my physics classes, there was like this 62-year-old. It was like the oldest guy in our class. And he actually had dropped out of Berkeley as well in like the 70s. And he started his own engineering firm. And then he always wanted to finish his degree. So he came back, many, many years later to finish. So I don't know, maybe in the future, might go
Yeah.
back to get the degree.
As like a hobby for fun. That's so
Yeah.
cool. I love that. And I love that, I think that we're going to see more and more of that too, like with the gig economy, especially like, do people really need college? I'm not so sure. But anyway, thank you both for sharing your personal stories and introducing yourselves to the audience. But let's get into these topics. Our first topic is standing out in a crowded market. Jesse, can you kick us off on this topic?
Sure, sure. So I noticed, I'll use myself an example. When I started out in my business, I would get a tremendous rush, a lot of pride when my clients would come to me and say, I have this problem that only you can solve. And I would use my skill set and I would solve the problem, and everybody was very happy. And then as more and more competitors entered the field, that rush started to diminish, and my clients would come to me and say, well, somebody else can solve my problem for a little bit cheaper. Why should I use you? And what makes you more expensive? What makes you better? And I started having to fight for my gigs. And then, if anybody's in this experience, as the saturation in your market gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it's a race to the bottom. And that pride, it goes from, how great can I deliver? How great can I be, to how cheap can I potentially do this and still make a profit? And that pride kind of diminishes. So I wanted to, not only for myself, but for my clients and people that needed it, help restore that pride and that excitement that most people have when they first start their business. So that's where, really standing out, and the concept of my consulting business is called decommoditized, right? So I think over the course of time, or over the course of a straight line, every single business, every single product, every single service will eventually become a commodity. The internet has only just sped that up because people now have endless choices to compare your services to other services out there. And for a long time, I was in denial. I wanted to, I was convinced that the intelligent, the educated clients out there that would really appreciate the skills that I refined over the years would appreciate me and hire me and give me their trust. But I got tired of looking for those particular clients, that they just weren't out there. So the question became, do I level up, or do I just race to the bottom with everyone else to help keep the lights on? And for myself, I figured I had to decommoditize myself. One of the examples I use in the book is a freeze ray, right? Going back to the supervillain analogy, the key ingredient for a freeze ray is helium-based plasma, right? So you're a supervillain, you have your freeze ray handy, and you go online and you look for helium-based plasma to get your freeze ray going, and you
I do that all the time.
Yep, right. And you realize that all the helium-based plasma looks the same, right? So how are you going to decide which helium-based plasma are you going to buy for your freeze ray? And chances are you're just going to decide on price, right? So I figured if my clients felt the same way about marketing as I do about helium-based plasma, how are they going to decide? Or how are they going to decide when they're choosing my clients for their services? So it's not just being the best or being, somebody's best kept secret. It's really differentiating yourself, making yourself stand out, and making yourself, undeniable to a potential prospect, making yourself uncomparable to competitors in the field when people are choosing or thinking about your potential product or service.
I love that. I've never thought about it from that angle of a supervillain. I don't know. I'm trying to think now. I guess, when I talk about villains, because I'm always encouraging my clients to tell their story. And of course, a story has certain elements to it, including a villain. But you've taken a whole other twist on this. Makes it super interesting. I'd love to hear from the audience. What do you all think about this? But also, Ricky, who's the villain in your industry, or how would I say that? How do you become the villain in your industry?
Yeah, I think what Jesse said, I think marketing differentiation and virality, especially in this data age, is actually quite important. Because I think right now there's so much competition, both in the kind of retail space as well as in the software space. Cluely, for example, I don't know, Jesse, have you heard of that company? But have you heard of Cluely?
No.
Oh yeah, their marketing is insane. They're basically they got viral because the CEO went online and basically said, we created an app to help you cheat on interviews. And that's how they became kind of rage baiting.
Okay.
And their one LinkedIn post got 6 million visits. So it's kind of like what Trump says, is there's no such thing as bad PR. It's if you can get attention, you can always convert that traffic.
Any press is good press, or so they say. Is this the link? Is it cluely.com?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at their website. It says #1 AI assistant for meetings, takes perfect notes, answers questions in real time, and makes you the most prepared person.
They changed this. If you go on Google and you search Cluely and you read some of the they recently had an article on TechCrunch that were talking about how they created viral hype. Yeah, it's pretty insane. If you just go to the Instagram and just look at some of their videos, it's you would never tell that they were actually a software application, because all their content is just random content to go viral, unrelated to their product, actually.
Interesting. So interesting. Is that kind of what you're saying, Jesse? Or I don't know, how do we relate this to what you were suggesting?
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake, and it's a very, very common mistake, clients will come to me and they're usually in a challenger scenario where they're entering a market, and they say, we want to look like those guys. We want to sound like those guys, feel like those guys. And those guys, if you want to call them that, are usually the name brand, right? Very equivalent to the superhero. They've got public favor. They typically, in marketing terms, have big muscles, which in marketing is deep pockets, right? Big budgets. And my under-resourced client, who already is behind the 8 ball, doesn't have the history that they have, is saying, I want to do what they're doing. I want to look like them. I'm going to try, and I can't outspend them. I can't out social media them, but I want to look like them. And if you think about, going back to the supervillain analogy, supervillains usually don't have big muscles. They don't have a tremendous amount of resource. They have to use their brains to take down the bigger guy, right? So again, it's that mentality of you don't want to go where everybody else is, and you don't want to do what everybody else is doing. You want to own a piece of the industry or a piece of your vertical that currently isn't saturated, or you want to think differently as opposed to everybody else following the superhero of your vertical.
Yeah, I love that take on it. So, yeah. Can you give us any good examples of like stories, maybe not clients, unless you can, of like, yeah, what are some like use cases where you kind of sneak in as the villain?
I mean, the easiest one that I think is becoming more and more mainstream is Liquid Death. Have you heard of
Oh,
those
yeah, yeah,
guys?
yeah.
Right. So the owner, Mike Cesario, famously said, like, every bottled water in the industry looked like a yoga accessory, right? They were all kind of designed for a specific audience, and every competitor that came in followed that template and just tried to do what they did. And he came in and created a lifestyle brand for an underserved audience. He knows it's 90% punchline, right? So it has nothing to do with the quality of the water or anything like that. But he built a multi $100 million company and brand, just using that supervillain mentality.
I love that. Yeah, you're right. That is a really good use case example. Liquid death, for anyone who doesn't know, is water in a can. I mean, like super brilliant. But then the can itself looks like kind of masculine. And like you said, it's like way different than like the yoga mom looking water. Yeah, I can appreciate a good liquid death.
Jesse,
Um,
do you feel like you almost have to take the unconventional, like be more controversial in the marketing message to stand out?
That's a great question. So everyone always asks, do I have to dress weird? Do I have to be funny? Do I have to be, the outlandish person in the room? And in my book, I kind of codified how brands throughout history, large and small, have successfully differentiated themselves. And we call it the universe of differentiation. There's 12 different planets or 12 different methods that you can utilize to differentiate your brand. And included in the universe, there's brands like Tiffany's, Steinway, Rolex that have successfully differentiated themselves and cornered their market. And you wouldn't think of those as different. People think different is weird. You wouldn't really associate those brands with being truly different, but they are differentiated and they stand out in their industry. So no, you don't have to go, the knee-jerk reaction is rage bait, controversy, be funny, be, a little offbeat. You don't have to if it doesn't fit your brand style.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that take. Because you're right. There is pressure to sort of like be Gen Z or like be sort of like TikTok chaotic, but like that doesn't necessarily fit every brand. I work
Yeah,
with a client who's very B2B, very blue, and the TikTok stuff just doesn't really go with them. So I
yeah,
know
yeah.
exactly what you're saying. Yeah. All right. Great topic. Love this. Before we move on, do either of you have anything else to share? Or Jesse, do you have any actionable advice you could give to the audience that they can take away from this?
I would say if you're thinking about differentiating yourself, a great exercise, all the business books out there say go out and find your differentiator or find your USP, and then very succinctly explain it to the world. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do. So one of the things that I did with my book is try to kind of process it out to help you get that differentiator, to help you get that messaging, a little more succinct. So a great example is you may think your industry is incredibly saturated, but the statistic is that if you sit down one of your prospects, they could probably only name about 7 of your competitors. So even if there's like 1,700 water brands out there, you sit down off the top of your head, you could probably only name about 7. So that narrows your competitor pool down to 7 that you need to truly differentiate yourself from. So don't look at your entire global industry. Find your top 7 competitors and start your differentiation process from there.
Yeah, that's a great point. We did get a question that came in. Let's see, did we answer this one? Ashwin is asking, sorry, clicking on top. What do we do? What do we do on a much smaller level as consultants or service providers to stand out, to differentiate when everything we provide feels and sounds the same? That's a good question.
Yeah. So if you truly feel like you're offering the same thing as everybody else, you probably are never going to differentiate yourself. Much like myself, I came up with the if you want to go back to your storytelling, Jesse, right? That origin story. Every supervillain has like this origin story that, something tips them over the edge. I call that the "this effing industry of mine" statement, right? So if you're feeling like everyone says the same thing and you're kind of making this list in your head of this guy says the same thing, I hate how this guy says this, everybody does this, what's wrong with your industry? And now you become the supervillain that shines a light on, you know what? You're right. All consultants are the same. That's why when I consult, I do this, and this differently. So start a list of everything wrong in your industry and pick one thing that you will no longer let slide and just become the supervillain standing against that one kind of cliche thing that all consultants do, and do the opposite.
Yes. And show up live in real time and tell us about it live on LinkedIn and talk to us and let us talk to you because people buy from people, not brands. But no, I love that. All right, let's transition into our second topic, global trade trends, post pandemic sourcing strategies. So, Ricky, can you kick us off on this topic?
Yeah. And I think to follow on what Jesse was talking about, differentiation, I think the supply chain is actually a great way to differentiate on a product level. So I think if you go on a lot of these like new e-commerce brands, a lot of products actually look and the very, very similar, especially with drop shipping now. You have all these like influencers selling the same exact product, and this is also a race to the bottom. So I think what I really want to emphasize is how do we differentiate product from both from a supply chain perspective as well as from a sourcing perspective. So I'll give an example. So most brands, I would say, if you're making a physical product, you're sourcing outside of China. I would say that's probably 90% of Amazon sellers and e-commerce brands. But I would say that especially now with the tariff situation and this post-pandemic chaos, it's really important to actually differentiate your supply chain so that you're not sourcing only out of China. And from a branding perspective, being made in USA or being made outside of China can actually be an advantage that you can differentiate yourself from all the other products in the market. So there's this strategy that people have been talking about called the China plus one strategy. And what China plus one has been saying is basically find sources, find regions to source outside of China. And the reason why a lot of small businesses don't do this is that it's actually kind of hard. So like Alibaba is kind of like the website that most kind of e-commerce brands go to when they want to find, a factory to produce whatever apparel they want. And it's mostly Chinese suppliers. But let's say you wanted to find a supplier in Mexico or in the US or in Vietnam. A lot of times there aren't platforms in those countries where suppliers can advertise themselves. And that's why like when we created SourceReady, our goal was like, hey, we can find you the supplier in the US domestically, or that supplier in Vietnam. And more importantly, I would say from a quality perspective, there's thousands of factories that can make clothes, actually hundreds of thousands of factories that can make clothing, but the supplier that works with that premium brand like Lululemon is going to have a very different product mindset and quality mindset than your average supplier that works with, let's say, a Temu or Shein or Uniqlo. So finding the right manufacturing partner is actually critical to differentiate, because if you can find Lululemon's factory, you can actually create higher quality products that differentiate yourself from other products in the market. And one thing that we help customers do is we have data from US Customs. So you can actually directly in our tool, like search who are the suppliers behind Lululemon, and our system will tell you exactly who their suppliers are. So I think that's something that in today's day and age, where obviously marketing is a great way to differentiate, but I think product is also something that you want to differentiate and stand apart from the rest of the crowd.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, that just to me, as someone who's more of like an online business person, the whole idea, which I don't know, is probably most people these days, but the whole idea is of like physical products. It just always kind of blows my mind. But then I'm kind of with the people who you said are like, hey, I wouldn't know how to find that factory in Vietnam. let alone like know, are they gonna be like high quality? Are they gonna
Yep,
be able to give me what I need? So like,
exactly.
is it just all relationship building for you? Are you like going over there and like meeting factories, or like how do you learn about all these factories?
So we aggregate data from like hundreds of different data sources. And one of the data that we use is, as I mentioned, we get data directly from US Customs. So we know where other brands are importing their products from. So if you know a supplier is working with a premium brand, let's say, Lululemon, then that supplier is going to be very different than the supplier that primarily works with Walmart. So that's how we build something called a supplier persona. So if you know what type of customers a manufacturer is mainly working with, you can kind of infer the type of quality that the supplier is more accustomed to make. And then I would say another thing is like for a lot of like small businesses, one thing that's really challenging is understanding how to navigate all the tariff situation. Like, Trump goes crazy and says, "Hey, we're going to add tariffs on this country again." How do we like um, plan ahead of time? Because I know a lot of small businesses, they were just literally hit with like 40% tariffs, and they're like, I have to pay, $20,000 now. It's like crazy. But like one problem is that I think people get too accustomed to doing what everyone else is doing and just like sourcing everything from China. Because to be honest, sourcing out of China is the easiest. It's like their supply chain is very stable. It's like easy to find suppliers. But when something, like COVID happens, or when something like tariffs happen, you're scrambling because you don't have any secondary sources or backups. So one thing that I would, really emphasize is don't put all your eggs in one basket. You should have your backup supplier in Mexico or in the US domestically or in Vietnam if something goes wrong with China. And I think like this whole concept of diversification is something that's going to continuously happen moving forward because of all this, geopolitical tension between US and China, because of, COVID-19, and because of, the world is becoming more fragmented. And I think you don't want to, risk your entire business on a single source.
Mm, yeah, definitely. What's your
And
take
Ricky,
on all this, Jesse? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say, Ricky, I'm in. I'm literally going through a not a problem, but a sourcing issue where I'm having trouble finding. There's a product at Hobby Lobby that I want, and just not very helpful on their end. Like I want to spend $7,000, and they're like, sorry, can't help you." So I have used Alibaba, successfully. You have to have a good head on your shoulders. But yeah, I mean, having backups and having other alternatives is a luxury that escapes me right now. So, for a number of reasons, I'm very interested in seeing what you have cooked up there.
Yeah, and one thing I can maybe add on is if anyone has used Alibaba, you know how time consuming it is to like talk to the factory, ask them. And, most of these factories are in China, right? So like you send them a message, you're not going to get a reply until like 7 hours later, and it takes like a week of back and forth just to like get a quote. And like one thing that we've really think like AI can really help with this is that why message each factory manually when you can just have AI talk to the factory? So
Right.
we built this agent where it does outreach at scale to all these suppliers. So let's say you say, hey, I want to find suppliers that can make this kind of toy. And then our AI will scan and build you a list of all the factories that match your criteria. And the AI will like message each factory one by one using your email, using your, Alibaba account. So the factory actually doesn't know they're talking to AI. They think it's you reaching out. And then it's going to do the bulk of the work of like, asking the factory, what is your price? What is your minimum order quantity? What are your payment terms? And then it's going to organize all these quotes in a way that's easy for you to compare. So this is actually why, like, I think for a lot of small businesses, sourcing is such it's very unfamiliar, because if you think about, like, let's say I'm a TikTok influencer, and most of my days I'm spending on marketing and understanding how to get my audience. But let's say I want to like convert that traffic to revenue. The most common way to convert it is either sell a course or like sell a physical product, right? Like sell something. And I think the physical product side, the challenge is actually, this is very unfamiliar to people. Like, how do you even calculate tariffs? How do I know if I should make this in the US domestically, or should I offshore to China? These are all like unfamiliar concepts to 99.999% of small businesses. And I think what gets me excited is I think like AI is this like tool that can really help democratize this, right? Where AI can guide you just like a professional sourcing person might, and say, hey, will ask you questions like, okay, what quantity of products are you ordering? What are the requirements for your products? And the AI will calculate and be like, oh, based on your requirements, I think you should go to Vietnam and this because of this reason. And here's a list of factories. So I think that is something I find, very exciting about how the industry is changing. It's giving
That is
power.
exciting.
And if you think about these big customers, like, we work with some of the largest retailers in the world, and they have entire teams of sourcing people, like hundreds, if not thousands of people whose job every day is to like find suppliers, negotiate. But like if you're a small business, let's say you're a mom and pop shop, you're like a small e-commerce store in, I don't know, in Tennessee, you're not going to be able to hire, a $200,000 a year supply chain expert to do this for you.
Right.
You're probably doing this yourself. You're sourcing yourself. And this is why a lot of times people get scammed, right? They don't know, like a factory will quote them like $12 for something when this actually should only cost $4. How do they know what is the right market price? And this is why, like, I think having AI do the majority of like the work and reaching out to all these different suppliers without you having to spend hundreds of hours is going to give power back to the small business.
So question for you, because like anything that we're applying AI to these days, which I love that you're doing that, and it's so smart to just like, totally disrupt that industry. But how do you handle the quality control or like the vetting once the AI initiates the conversation? Is there like a human that jumps in?
Yeah. So ultimately, as I mentioned, like AI is only going to ever, be assistant. It's ultimately up to the human to make the final call. I think what AI is good at is giving you all the options and telling you all the risks, right?
Yeah.
So it will tell you like, hey, if you work with this Chinese supplier, you're going to pay 40% tariffs. Whereas if you choose this US supplier, yes, the production cost might be higher, but look, you don't have this 40% tariff. So maybe in the end, you're only paying 20% extra. And remember, if something is made in the USA, you're going to have premium branding. If you say your product is made in the USA, you're probably going to command higher retail price. So I think you shouldn't race to the bottom. You shouldn't always choose the supplier that's cheapest, because you have to look at it from a holistic perspective. So I think that's something that it's really, really important to keep in mind, especially for people looking to start their own brand, right? You're not just selling commodity. You want to actually create differentiated products obviously at a competitive rate, but you want to differentiate yourself.
Yeah, back to that whole differentiation thing. Looks like we got a couple comments here. Let's see what David is saying. Deciding how to pick between domestic or Chinese manufacturing is an important question to ask. Love that thought. Yes, and it is so interesting how global economics, geological considerations, and the availability of human labor in combination with AI can help us be more productive as a society. 100%. Totally agree. Would love to hear from more audience members. Keep us honest. Ask your questions. We just want to know you're here. Just say hello. But yeah, no, this is a really great conversation. Before I transition into our next topic, is there anything that you'd want to close out on with this topic, Ricky?
Yeah, so I think to answer the question about choosing domestic versus Chinese manufacturing or overseas, it's very nuanced. It really depends on what kind of product you're making. I would say, for example, we have customers that are doing like supplements, things that you put in your mouth. I would say like FDA verified things. I would recommend making that domestically in the U.S. because there are certifications that suppliers must have. But if you're making like general commoditized products, like apparel or like other accessories, I would say you probably most likely will still source outside of the U.S. simply because the U.S. no longer has a manufacturing base to make those kind of products. But there are cases where if you have a very premium positioning, there are certain products that you can make in the U.S. domestically if you can command the pricing. So, for example, like in Los Angeles, there are actually some really good clothing factories that still exist, but they're probably not going to be able to make a huge volume. But if you're just making to do a small drop, like maybe like 500 pieces of something, you can definitely make that in the U.S. And the benefit of the U.S. manufacturing is the agility, because it's domestic. You can get the product in a much shorter time frame, and you're going to be able to react faster to changes. So, it's a more nuanced answer, but it really depends.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, Ricky. Such an interesting topic. I really don't know a lot about it, but I do sell on TikTok. So I'd like the brands will send me free stuff and I make a video on it. That's like the very little bit of e-com knowledge that I have. But I did notice like, even as a seller, the big change, like when the tariffs happened, selling got much more difficult. Products started moving much slower.
Yep.
So like all these changes you're talking about, they really impact those of us at the other end of the screen trying to like sell this stuff. But great topic. Next topic is going to be the future of content consumption, and we're going to get into that right after this brief message.
This is Mike, also known as Clean with Mike on Twitter. Mike hired a virtual assistant from Cherry Assistant about 2 years ago. Now he has a $50K per month business fully managed by a remote operator in South Africa. His VA from South Africa does the following: closing inbound leads on the phone, Yelp and Google and Facebook, manages his CRM and Go High Level, deals with rescheduling, cancellations, any issues, hires and manages the cleaners, and sends them daily reports and updates. Mike has a fully cash flowing business managed by a remote operator for only $8 an hour. You can also hire a US equivalent worker in the Philippines, South Africa, Latin America for a fraction of the cost with Cherry Assistant. Be like Mike and grow your business with offshore staff.
So if you're listening to this on podcast, right now we're showing a menu of their services on the screen, including lead generation, CRM management, prospecting assistance, sales presentation preparation, data entry and cleanup, customer support, and project management assistance. Just scan that QR code if you're watching this on video, or go to cherryassistant.com. Make sure you tell them that you heard about them through WinsDay, and you'll get $250 off your first month. So let's get into that next topic. So the next topic is the future of content consumption. Jesse, will you kick us off?
Absolutely. So from what I hear from all my agency people is, with the advent of AI, everybody's kind of scrambling. The content creation agencies are wondering what the future of content creation is going to be. Something that took hours before can now be done in minutes, exponentially so. And I think the important strategy here is not so much to look at the future of content creation, but look at the future of content consumption. How are we as human beings going to deal with this influx of content? So I was at a trade show in 2006, and there was a data analyst there. I was one of the few people in the room because nobody likes data. But this guy said something that like really stuck with me. He pointed out, it was for the television industry. I was pitching a TV show, and he said something happened in 2006 that scientists noted on human behavior that had never been noted before. Something that humans are doing that they've never done before. And that thing was they are willing to pay more for less. And the example he used was they have people that are, or cable companies that are offering you 100, 200, 300 channels for $99 a month. So that's 50 cents a channel, maybe less. People are now cutting their cords and saying, you know what, instead of paying 50 cents for a channel, I'm going to pay $5 for the BBC app because it's curated. I know I want it, and I don't want to be overloaded with all these potential options. So that was a good almost 20 years ago. Now imagine all of the streaming apps, all of the content that we have online, and now exponentialize it with the easy ability to create content utilizing AI. Our brains as humans are just, they're not capable of consuming all of the content that's going to be out there. I use an example of, social media in general. When Facebook, Twitter, they first started out, they had TV commercials, and it was like, come on, join Facebook, join Twitter, share pictures of your grandkids, create content. And they needed us, the general public, to join these platforms and create the content. And then all of a sudden, it got to a point where we were creating too much content, and the dreaded algorithm came in, right? So there was too much content, and they said, you know what, we're gonna curate your content. We're only gonna pick and choose the really good content to share with your friends, your family, your followers. And now fast forward, and these social media platforms are like, thank you for your service. We really don't need you anymore. We have the big influencers and the big networks all creating content on our platforms. We want to keep people on our platforms as long as possible, and it's usually the well-produced, really shiny content. So we're going to show your stuff even less and less and less. Thanks for all you've done, and see ya. So anyone that's been in the social media game probably noticed that it's getting increasingly more and more difficult to get even your content seen amongst your followers, people that have opted in. So what do we do as humans to help our brand, to help our personal brand, even our personal lives get in front of the people that actually want to see it? And I think that's where the future of content consumption is. The sub-headline to that title is why you don't need a campaign, you need a cult, right? So you need people that are ride or die with your brand. They want to hear from you, and there's got to be a reason. If you're just posting stuff, pictures of your latest swag with your logo on a fleece, it's not going to cut it anymore. It's just white noise or digital tofu in the world of the buffet of all the stuff that you're competing against. So again, being that true differentiator, developing a cult following for your brand is the way you're going to stand out, because a great campaign probably isn't going to cut it in the future.
That's a good point. Ricky, what's your take on all that before I jump in?
Let me think about it before I respond.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was going to jump in, Jesse, when you were saying, I can't remember how you phrased it, but you're like, it's harder to get seen now, even with your own followers. You got to like really do things to stand out. And part of me wanted to like Tourette's and be like, you got to make dancing videos. But I'm just totally joking. Like dancing is like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the time when I'm talking to different clients who are starting to like post on LinkedIn, that's where their mind goes. When I start saying, we need to humanize you more, we want to see more of you, immediately their mind goes to like this TikTok style, like I've got to start just being silly and posting these like Gen Z style videos. And really like that's never what we're suggesting. Like really, we just want like clips from like streams like this, and also like images of people so people can see how you're real, because people connect with people, not brands. And also, I can't help but mention live streaming in the future of content consumption. Of course, we're live right now, and full disclosure, that's what Reveting does. We help businesses go live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and then we repurpose that into podcast, short form video. But with the rise of AI and everything sort of being, I don't know, non-human these days, even like the blogs you're reading, the newsletters you're reading, a lot of that was created by AI. There's something about a live stream that can't be replicated, because you're literally live in front of your audience having a human conversation, and deep fakes haven't quite caught this yet. So I'm curious from you, Jesse, like the future of content consumption, do you think that, people are going to start looking for more human related content that's less AI? And where do you think that'll take us past the dancing videos?
Yeah, so I kind of relate a lot of the content being created now. You ever see The Matrix when they're in like the spaceship and they're eating that gray mush, right? That's kind of what a lot of the content being created out there is. It's just kind of this gray mush that doesn't really pique anybody's interest. It's just content for content's sake, right? So on one hand, that makes it very easy to stand out and kind of differentiate yourself if everybody else is just kind of going the easy route. But again, I think it's, why, as much as it is who you are, it's why you are, right? So you started off perfectly, Jesse. Tell us your life story in 2 minutes. I'm gonna get on here and tell you everything about differentiation and why you should do this, but you don't know why the hell you should listen to me, right? Like, who the hell am I, right? So it's why are you doing this, not who you are, but why you are. So I think, the authenticity that, I'm not gonna bash AI, because I use AI all day, every day.
I love it.
It's a great tool, but it has to be used. It's a tool. It's not the finished house. It's a tool to help you build the house. So yeah, I think it's going to be a mixed bag for the future, but keeping in mind the old school ways of, posting pictures of, someone's birthday in the HR, probably not going to get you the same amount of likes as they did in the past.
Yeah, or those probabilistic TV ads where it's like, hey, I think my audience watches this soap opera, so I'm just going to blanket buy this ad space, even though half of them may never buy my product. Like, now we get to target deterministically and actually like target people. Yeah, I love technology. But
I guess I have an input. I think one thing that we've seen on the content that we've been creating is that I think the hook is like 80% of what determines whether your video or content has the potential to get really good engagement. Like the first 5 seconds of a video or 10 seconds of a video, because I think people's attention spans have gotten much shorter over the past couple of years. Like people don't even watch. Like if you can't grab their attention in the first 5 to 6 seconds, people lose interest. And that's why I think there's been so much. Like if you go on a lot of like even LinkedIn content, I think they always start with some controversial or some part where you're like, oh, it's interesting. It's like some stories, like you're reading a story, and then the harder to read content comes later. So I think having an important hook, I feel like determines a lot about whether you have the potential of engaging the user later on.
Definitely. And I'm curious, Jesse, what are your thoughts on like virality? Because I feel like the future of content consumption, it's going to become harder and harder to become viral. Plus, people who are viral now kind of look like an ad. So brands already are starting to focus on like micro influencers and like smaller, accounts. So I'm just curious, like with the future of content consumption, do you think brands should be focusing on getting more likes, more engagement, or like what's the goal for you?
Yeah, I think all of those numbers are vanity metrics, right? So I'm always looking for little indicators. I call it human climate change, right? What are the little things that are going to lead to big things? So I don't necessarily think, I think it's probably a huge mistake for a brand to set out to make a viral video, right? Videos go viral because they're truly authentic. Something authentic happens. So one of those little key indicators that I notice is, in addition to what I said before, that people are willing to actually filter stuff out of their world that they don't want to see, is the rise of zines. So the rise, fall, and rise again of zines. Do you guys know what zines are?
No, what is that?
So zines back in like the punk rock days, 70s and 80s, they were literally handmade magazines. You'd print them out on an 8.5 by 11, fold them in half, staple them down the middle. And they were very frenetic. They were handmade most of the time, hand drawings, somewhat a little on edge. But they would get out there either promoting someone's band, the genre of music, anything. So these things called zines started proliferating, and then they kind of got beaten down by the big guys, and now they're starting to get popular again. And I think that's an indicator of people just wanting that pure, handmade, hand curated, authentic content. And most of them look like garbage, like they're literally photocopied, folded, stapled. But for some reason, people are starting to gravitate back towards that medium. I think it's something that's true, authentic, something they can trust in a world of just AI. And I'm going to say anything in the first 5 seconds to get a like and a follow and, another 5 seconds of your attention, so I get more engagement. So I think, again, I'm looking at these as key indicators of future behavior. The rise again of these zines, this handmade, this curated content, this content that a human being stands behind, is gonna be the future of content creation and consumption.
Does that mean we'll be looking up more noses? And I asked that because the Gen Z, they're like taking these videos and they're like recording themselves like this. They don't even care. And like part of their point, I feel like, is to like be sloppy and to like be, it makes it look more authentic. If you're not like, okay, I'm an ad,
Yep.
Now I look like I am, performing for you.
Right.
Whereas if I'm just talking like this, it looks like I'm talking on my phone. My face is moving around, and it's sort of wild. But yeah, and even like we're seeing a rise of images on social media where people have their eyes closed. Like back in the day when you took a picture and your eyes were closed, it was like, oh my gosh, let's take another shot. But now it's like we like those airs. We like seeing people's eyes closed because we know it was candid.
Yep. Yeah. One of the rappers I listened to, one of his lines is, it's like, don't send me your profile pic, send me your tagged pic. Like, I want the real thing, not your posed thing.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, we better transition into this last topic, which is choosing the right suppliers with tech. So we're transitioning again from content back to suppliers. So what can you tell us about choosing the right supplier with tech, Ricky?
I think for tech, right now, I think all the good tech products offer good trials. So if a product doesn't offer you a trial, I would say, especially for smaller businesses, that's going to be the hard part. So I think with SourceReady, our goal was we want to democratize the software. So anyone today can try the system out. And I think from the perspective of choosing the right supplier, as I mentioned in my previous conversation, I think the challenge for a lot of small businesses is they don't know how to vet the factory. They don't know what is a good quality. Let's say a supplier quotes you, let's say $4 for a shirt. Is that considered expensive or cheap? And I think with AI and technology, what really could help out is the AI has all this data and it can tell you, like, for example, if you were to source this from this supplier, here are the pros and cons. For example, we can tell you this supplier has experience working with similar brands in your industry. So it might be potentially a better fit. From a pricing perspective, because AI can reach out to dozens of suppliers for you, you can actually get more options. And from those options, compare the best option that makes sense for you. But I think with any technology and tool, it's just a tool. Like AI is just a tool. Ultimately, you have to have your own judgment. But I think what AI and technology can really help with small businesses, especially, is it can help you better understand what options you have and then make the analysis much easier. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And having an easy analysis is so important, because if we're just out there doing all this work and we're not actually tracking what we're doing, that's when businesses get into trouble.
Exactly. And I think what right now with tariffs and everything that's uprooting, I think AI can really kind of help you do real-time monitoring. So we have businesses where 90% of their entire supplier base is in China. So our AI can predictively say, hey, you should start finding alternative sources for these categories in, for example, Vietnam right now, because if something goes wrong again with the negotiation between US and China, you're immediately going to be slapped on a huge risk. So I think this ability for AI, because as a human, you just don't have the bandwidth. A lot of times, you're busy with other things, and it's sometimes it's just kind of laziness. You just don't have the time to actually do all of this proactive management. Whereas I think technology can really help with that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, before we transition on, I'm curious, Jesse, do you have any take on this topic of choosing the right suppliers with tech?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited to meet Ricky. I do a bunch of outsourcing and manufacturing, and the process. It's kind of like buying a car, right? Buying a car should be an exciting thing. You're going out, you're going to spend a lot of money, you're going to get something that you're going to use for the next 7-8 years, and it's always like a trade-off. Like they have the color, but they don't have the model, and you're always trading off, these things. You should be treated like a king, like walking in, like spending all this money. And it's the same thing with manufacturing. Like I'll find the manufacturer that has really nice stuff, but they take forever. Or I'll find one that's cheap and they're quick, but they got bad reviews. And it's always like I'm going out to invent something and create this amazing thing. And it's always like a game of subtraction. It's never like, oh, they can also do this. It's always like, I can pick this guy, but they don't do that, or I can go with this person and they don't do that. So I'm excited for Ricky's platform and kind of seeing what superpowers it can give me.
Awesome. I love that. I love when we can introduce people here on the WinsDay show and you guys can make things happen after this. That's so incredible. Well, thank you both for sharing all that knowledge on all those topics. It was really interesting. We've never really talked about suppliers. I don't remember. So this is a really good topic. And then, of course, I can always talk about content consumption. But we've got a few more segments to get to. So we've got the Guru of the Week. Ooh. So we want to know, who is your Guru of the Week and why should we all go follow them?
All right. Want to kick it off, Ricky?
All right. Jason Lemkin. He's the founder of SaaStr. He previously was the founder and CEO of EchoSign, which got acquired by Adobe. So now it's Adobe Sign. And he's just like the voice of software, I guess, like anything that's happening in AI, any new tech trends, he's on top of it. And he's sharing a lot of really good, actual use cases of how companies and businesses are using AI to transform, their operations. So I would really highly recommend following his LinkedIn. He has a lot of really insightful content about like, what tools to adopt, how to think about using AI. And yeah, like he's someone that I really look up to.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, my guy is America's sweetheart, Eric Ryan. So if you're looking for those inspirational LinkedIn quotes, you're probably not going to find them here. I met Eric probably right after I launched my first book 2 or 3 years ago, and he was a regular guy that literally said, "I want to get famous." And he committed himself to the YouTube, LinkedIn grind and said, "I am going to get a TV show. I'm going to grind it out. I know how hard it is." And, we kind of see, we like a lot of unconventional things. We see eye to eye on that. But dude went out and he's got himself a cable show now. So if you like an underdog story or a DIY, success in the face of adversity, you don't mind a few curse words, check out America's sweetheart, Eric Ryan.
So cool. Thank you for sharing both their names. I am actually following Jason Limkin, but I've not heard of Eric Ryan. So thank you for sharing that. Audience, we just tagged him in the comments. So go diversify your feed and follow those amazing leaders. And last but not least, before we go, we want to know more about you both. So could you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, what it is you do, who you serve, and if they could be served by you, how do they reach you? We'll start with you, Ricky.
Yeah, so I'm the founder of SourceReady. I've been in the supply chain space for over 10 years. I've built 2 companies, both helping brands, retailers, small businesses better manage their sourcing and supply chain. And my newest venture, SourceReady, is a platform to help anyone actually trying to source any physical product, whether you're trying to start your own supplement brand or start your own clothing brand or want to start your own electronics product. Our platform basically helps you find the best supplier globally, not just in China. And our AI basically helps you reach out to suppliers for you, get you quotes, helps you analyze, which product or which suppliers might be the best fit. And it's completely free to use. So, you can just go to our website today, try it out, and, follow my LinkedIn, or you can send a connect request. I'd be happy to do a demo if that's ever needed. And yeah, I'm just really passionate about supply chain. So if anyone ever encounters any problems with their suppliers or need help on sourcing, I'm here as a resource.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And how about you, Jesse? If people could be served by you, who do you serve? How do you serve them? And if they could be served by you, how do they reach you?
Sure. I think I want to serve 2 audiences. First audience is my fellow marketers. I think for a long time, marketers have gotten the short end of the stick. If you think about it, anyone that's in power probably wouldn't be there if it wasn't for their marketing. So this is kind of my books are a rally cry for all my fellow marketers out there getting the short end of the stick. It's time to stand up and take back the power. So Marketing for Supervillains Volume 1 and Volume 2 just came out. And I think marketing is the coolest career you can have. So I want to make marketing cool for everyone. So I created a bunch of different cool box sets and personas. So there's 4 different types of marketing supervillain you could be. So there's a quiz on our website that you can take and figure out your marketing supervillain persona. And inside the box, there's stuff that's cool for marketers that's been lacking in the industry. I think we're a lot cooler than the industry allows us to be. So it's time for a revolution. And my second audience is people that are feeling that they're on the verge of becoming a commodity. You've lost that pride that you once felt solving your clients' problems. I have a very easy 4-week onboarding process on our website, decommoditize.com. Happy to consult you and see where your opportunities are. And if you're a marketer looking for cool people to hang out with, marketingforsupervillains.com, also available on Amazon.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that you have like a whole like toy, it looks like a box. I've never seen anything like that for marketers.
I wasn't lying. I've been sourcing. I told Ricky I've been sourcing things from overseas and doing my best, but sounds like now I could do a lot better job. So
wow.
Let's connect, Jesse. And that's what's really cool.
Yes, please connect so that Jesse can make more fun toys for marketers. Yes, I love that. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show. This was a really great episode. Love the topics. Next week, we have 2 more really great guests. We have Mike Busby and Jonathan Schubler. So hope everyone watching can come back for that. But until then, thanks again, Jesse and Ricky. This was a really great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Have a great night.